Hello and welcome to the final video in my little 5-part mini series on going from just surviving in motherhood to really thriving. If you haven't caught the other 4 videos, you can sign up via the link below with your email address and I'll send them to you. Hit the subscribe button and check out the other videos in the series. So I've left a really big topic for last, and it's definitely not one that I claim to be an expert in, so please don't think that. It's one that I have experience in and one that I'm still definitely learning in. So this is struggling in your relationship when you've got young kids. So a little bit of backstory if you've only just stumbled across me. My husband and I have 2 boys. So our eldest is 6 and our youngest is 3, and we're due with another boy in June of this year. So we separated when our eldest was about 16 months old. That first year with the first baby was really hard for us. We really struggled as a couple. It's not something that I'm going to go into a huge amount of detail with here. I've written about it on my blog before. You can always go and check that out. But basically, we just didn't know how to balance time for ourselves, time as a couple, and time as a family. That kind of was the crux of it. There was a lot of resentment. Really didn't realize how much work it takes to keep the relationship going. And we kind of just expected that love to always be there, and that's not the case. You need to be putting in daily effort into your relationship if you want it to be feeling really good. So the times in our relationship where we've had obviously the most trouble were when we separated. We were apart for 3 or 4 months and we ended up coming back together, obviously. More recently, during our struggles with losing 3 babies, that was a really tough time because grief took us on separate directions again. And then of course, even just day to day, we still have our little niggles and arguments, and it's always about that coming back together to be like, okay, this isn't working, something's not working, what can we do differently? So like I said, not a relationships expert, but I do want to open up the conversation that relationships when you have young kids is really bloody hard. And I think we need to be more honest about that and stop pretending that we have perfect relationships, because it's hard. And I think it's okay to say it's hard. So ideally, we would go into having a baby and we would have already discussed our expectations around what you and they will be doing around the house, work-wise, money-wise, how you're going to parent, all of those things, all of the things that bring up the conflict. But unfortunately, none of us do that. We just go in because we're in love and making a baby is the next logical step, and we have a baby and then we realize, oh crap, there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't agree on, or just we fall into the patterns that our parents laid out for us. So perhaps it's traditional gender roles, we fall into those, and maybe they don't work so well anymore because you're doing more work than maybe your mum did, or perhaps they just don't work because they're outdated and they don't work anymore. I think one of the things is really being clear on what each of your expectations are around the relationship, how you work as a family, because sometimes the arguments are because you're valuing different things. You don't have the same values when it comes to how a family is going to run. It's going to be really difficult to get along as a couple. I think it's really important to share how hard it is, especially in those early years when you're not getting any sleep. It's almost torture in those early years. And I think sometimes it can be tempting to put on this face of, no, I'm coping, it's okay. But if they're not coping, then the communication breakdown is they're not going to help. And if you're actually struggling, and it just creates conflict. So best to be honest about it. Talk about how hard it is. See if you can find some humor in how hard it is, because keeping on laughing is always good for your relationship. But importantly, just sharing that, you know, this is really hard, and being honest about what you need help with. Again, here's that golden tip that's been coming up in every video. Making sure you both have time out as individuals is so important if your relationship is going to stay strong. And it needs to be scheduled, and it needs to happen at least weekly. Even when you've got a young baby who is demand feeding, you need to make sure you're getting that time for you. It might be a lot shorter. It might be managed differently. They might have to hover around the class that you're taking in case Bub needs a feed and is hysterical and needing you. Try not to let the fact that it's hard to take time for you in those really early days stop you from taking time at all. So making sure you both get time for yourself as individuals, time for yourself as a couple. So yes, actually connecting as people, not as parents, is really important. And time as a family is also important. And my last tip is to just sort out the stuff that's causing the conflict. So I think sometimes when we're sleep deprived, when we're feeling resentful because we haven't had time for ourselves, we kind of bump around the issue instead of getting to the issue. So if the issue is money and the lack of money, have a conversation about money, make a plan and stick to it. If the issue is about not having enough time for yourself, make a plan, sit down, write a schedule and stick to it. If the problem is the fact that you don't connect as a couple anymore, you feel like you don't have any common interests anymore because babies tend to put a big divide between those common interests, sit down, have an honest conversation about it and come up with something that you can work on together. If it's something in the home, a renovation you can work on, if it's an interest that you can pursue together and make time for, anything. But I think so often we bump around the issue and we blame each other and we say, but you're doing this and you're doing that, instead of getting to actually, this is what the problem is. And this at this point is what is my biggest issue. And addressing that rather than addressing the resentment or addressing the hurt. Because you can go round and round on the resentment and the hurt and the blame, but if you can get down to actual practical things, and then the benefit of that is you've got this plan, you're both sticking to it, you can feel like, oh, they're really trying to do this. I can see that. It's physical and tangible, and you can see that they're really trying to improve the relationship. So bottom line, relationships when you have really young kids is hard, and it needs to be seen as a work in progress. You will go like this. You'll have days when it's amazing and you're in this love bubble, and other days where it's like hell and you don't even want to look at them. Be kind with yourself, be kind with them. See if you can stay connected as much as possible through both talking and physically connecting, giving a hug, giving a kiss, being there for them, listening to them, and doing your very best. So this is one of the many topics that we cover in my course Vive, where we cover 21 lessons to help ditch the overwhelm, reconnect, and actually enjoy motherhood. So if this has resonated with you today, I would love if you would go and check that course out. I would love to welcome you into that community and help you come to a place where you can actually really enjoy motherhood and family life, because you really do deserve it. Thank you again for joining me for this series. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you again soon. Namaste.